Start a podcast, he says. Make it about employee experience and workplace culture, he says. Great! But it's pretty serious stuff, and it should be. We're talking leadership, communication, psychological safety, self-awareness, situational awareness. It's a lot, and it means something, but where's the humor? Where's the joy? Oh yeah, it's in this episode. Hold on. Hello to you. I'm Russell. This is Relationships at Work, the Employee Experience and Workplace Culture podcast. What do you think about when I say things like judgments, jumpstarts, and joy? Or definitions, DYK, and delight? One more? Okay. Fidgety, frights, and feelings. I'm a fan of alliteration. You can probably tell that already. Any idea what I'm talking about? Well, what I'm talking about are the topics in Raw Notes. That's that weekly note that I pass into your inbox, giving you some insights, some resources, and a bit of what's coming up. Why, Russell, where do we find such things? I am so glad you asked. Go to russellawlicker.com. At the top right, you will see a area to sign up right there. And you get a free series of employee journey interviews that can come in really handy at work. So you get the free tool, you get signed up for the Raw Notes, and you'll have something all bright and shiny in your inbox every week. They drop in around, I put them out on Thursdays. Yes, every Thursday you'll get one of those. So if you're interested, join the community. I would love to have you. I don't know if you picked up, but one of the words I used about Raw Notes was joy. Joy is the topic of this particular episode. We're going to be talking to how do I describe it? A cultural consultant. That's right. She consults on workplace culture. And one of the things she's written a bit about is joy and humor, bringing those things into the workplace. So I was pretty excited to talk to her because, you know what? I don't think there's enough of it. But people are kind of afraid to introduce it because humor and joy can be so personal. So we get a little nervous. We get a little risk adverse. Well, I'm going to challenge everyone to be a little bit more risk aware and bring some humor and joy into your lives, especially in that workplace part of it. So let's go talk to Erin Skillen. And on the show today, we have Erin Skillen. Here is why she is awesome. She is the founder of Content for Good, a consultancy helping organizations improve their culture and engagement. Well, that sounds like a familiar topic. Co-founder of Amira Health and Family Sparks, award-winning organizations focusing on managing mental health programs. She was the producer vice president of a production company for almost a decade. She also has a few projects on the go, including co-hosting a podcast of her very own called Demarried Life. Oh, she also used to, or still does, a virtual skateboard company. Curious. And here she is hanging out with us. Hi, Erin.
I swear I'm not a cajillion years old with all these different fragments and pieces. Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
Just a lot of plates to spin.
Exactly.
That's all it is. Shiny ball. Oh, that looks fun.
Yeah.
That looks fun. I'm the same.
Totally.
I get it. So to start off the episode in which we're going to talk about humor and joy.
Yes.
Interesting topic.
Yes.
For the workplace. What's your best or worst employee experience, Erin?
Yeah, I had an early one that kind of shaped kind of how the rest of my life went. I worked at Walmart. I worked there in high school for a year in Manitoba and then for 3 years out here in BC. And it was a really good lesson in how not to treat your employees. There was a cheer in the morning they tried to make you do. I never did the cheer. I lip synced the cheer, and that was meant to be like inspiring and engaging. I was like, no, not so much. This is degrading and embarrassing. We had customers take a dump on the shelf. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had like a customer throw a Gone with the Wind double VHS at one of my coworkers. I had and I had a guy asking me if there were any men in my electronics department who knew what they were doing before I'd even opened my mouth to help him. So it was a really surreal experience, just in what the customer's already is always right mentality versus let's take care of our people, let's make them happy, and let's let that happiness sort of fuel the customer experience. So it really set the standard for me to go, okay, this is not my life. Corporate life is not happening for me.
If anything, lessons we learn are as much about what not to do and what we never want to ever do again as it is to model behavior.
Exactly. And I'll just say, I know some people are working there and I know some people need to work there and all that and all the power to them. I did not have the patience and I started getting pretty mouthy in my last year. So it was them or me. One of us was going quicker than,
Let's hope some cultures have changed since then.
Exactly. It's been 20 years. Fingers crossed.
So today, Erin,
yes,
it's humor and joy in the workplace. Where the hell do you have time to put humor and or joy on a to-do list? I don't have that kind of time. My Outlook is full. Why do you think my Teams meetings are blowing up?
Yep.
What are you thinking and what are you talking about when you say a world where humor and joy exist in the workplace?
Yeah, I think that it doesn't have to be about time. It can be about the way you do the things. So I think that it's often we get so lost in the nuts and bolts of what we have to do that we miss the bits that can actually take a little more work now, just a tiny bit, just do it a little differently now, but will actually pay off down the road because you'll have a more connected team. You'll have people who are more in sync in what they're doing, and you'll be able to harness that and get better results. But first you have to build that, and it doesn't have to be difficult. It really, really doesn't.
So lay it out here.
Yeah.
What is humor and joy? Is it somebody makes a joke at their stand-up at the beginning of the day and it's mandated? Or is it somebody coming in and seeing, I saw a funny movie last night, let me tell you about it?
Yep.
Is it prescribed or is it just more organic?
I think it's just being thoughtful about how things are being done. So creating opportunities when people are being a bit more authentic and letting it all kind of hang out in a funny way, not kind of stamping that down and putting the serious mask back on and be like, okay, no, get back to work. Allowing those moments to take place because there's actually a physical release that happens when you laugh. You know how you feel after you've watched a funny movie. So it's not, I think when it's too prescribed, like if you stood in a room and at a stand-up and said everybody has to tell a joke, people would quit, and they should quit because that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare for a lot of people. It's more about let the funny people be funny, let the people who like to laugh at them, and then everyone who's in between, let them see they're allowed to be human beings and they're not going to be smacked down for it. It can be professional.
Side note, we're both Canadians, so writing humor for this in the show notes is going to be real fun.
Exactly. Just have like the Canadian version and the American version. Yeah.
I'm going to have to do that.
Exactly.
So why would you feel this is necessary for a culture? What has been lacking that we even need to have a conversation why humor and joy are so necessary?
Yeah. So I really, you know what it was, honestly, during the pandemic, I was working in mental health and running a mental health company. I'm on my own now, but I was running this company through this intensely difficult experience. And I looked at it and I went, okay, I'm not a therapist. I can't provide actual counseling, but what can I do to help lighten the load for people? So it was looking for opportunities to add humor, not to laugh at anyone, but laugh with people at circumstances, things that are going on, to be able to create also the joyful moments that don't have to be funny, but moments where people feel really seen and that you took a moment to think about them. And just those moments to help people really nurture their emotional well-being while they're there busting their asses, getting the job done and doing really difficult work. And so that's when I kind of looked at it and I went, okay, I collected testimonials for my company was one thing I did. And what kept coming up was about humor. People kept saying humor. And I was like, is that a thing? Like, is there value to that? And so I did some research and I took a course actually for resilient team making during the pandemic when everyone was separated. And yeah, there is actually a lot of value to it. This is a thing that actually matters. So that's when I started digging into it and looking at how I could sort of motivate others to bring those elements into the workplace that I was trying to bring into whichever workplace I stepped into.
I find resiliency a word I have some trouble with.
Yep.
Because we use it a lot.
We keep
talking about it like it's a goal when I'm going, why do teams need to feel like, why do they need to be resilient? What is it, because you have such a shitty culture that you need to build resiliency so you can put up with it?
Exactly.
Or is it a matter of being resilient in times like the pandemic?
Yes.
Like, I don't think it's defined well enough. So how do you feel that humor and joy help with resiliency in a good way?
Yeah, so I see it in a good way, because no matter what you're dealing with in life, there's always typically one area that's not going well, at least one area. Like the moment, I think it was Bridget Jones who said, the moment something goes right, something else goes wrong. It's just this weird juggling act that we have to keep us on our toes. And so I think that resilience is really about bouncing back. It's about that ability to get back up again when things can really suck. And yeah, if you're one of those clowns from the 80s, those inflatable clowns, do you remember those? And you punch them in the face and they'd pop back up and you could just hit them over and over again. If you're that person at your work, you don't need resilience. You need boundaries, and you need to get the hell out of there. But when something happens, and maybe it's a one-off, or maybe it's just one area of your life, or just things compounding, that ability to be able to nurture yourself, to get back up and to keep going is so key. And to me, that's where resilience has value. It's not about making yourself be susceptible to more bad and I can just take it. It's not about that. It's not about mental toughness. It's about that ability to get back up and go, okay, what did I learn from this and how do I move on?
You talked about hearing from validators and feedback around mental health when it came to humor. What were people looking for? What was the connection for mental health to humor, and even deeper joy? I know we're kind of combining humor and joy into one topic, but they aren't, because what somebody finds joyous might not necessarily be funny.
No.
So it's not the same thing.
And what someone finds funny creates zero joy whatsoever. So yeah, they don't always go together.
Fair comment. So let's first connect what you've seen. I don't know why I have a comb in my hand. I don't know why.
You never know when you're going to need to just flick it back and get it out. I have a piece of Lego. I've got a little Lego bridge here. So we've got our fiddly stuff on our desk. We should know better by now.
So let's connect mental health from what you've heard to joy. First to humor. First to humor.
Yeah, so connecting mental health to humor. So it's interesting, because I say that Schindler's List, the movie, even
real funny movie,
really,
hilarious
right?
movie. Way to start.
So intense, so
funny.
And even that movie has jokes in it. If you, and it took me probably the second or third time I saw it in my life to kind of go, oh wait a minute, that was funny. And it's that release. It's a physical release that's actually good for your heart. It's good for your digestion. It's good for your circulation. It releases dopamine and other good drugs, healthy endorphins in your brain that give you that natural boost. It's kind of like going for a little run, right? Physical activity is really great for mental health. So is that what I call like internal physical activity that happens when you're engaged in a funny moment. It's one of those things when things are just super, super intense, and then someone makes the right joke at the right time or says the right thing, and it's just like the pressure isn't all gone, but it's gotten a little bit lighter.
How do you find joy at work? Let's jump around joy.
Yeah. So my take is not about finding it. You make it, because if you can look for it, you can go around. Like I'm very much an advocate for like look around, see something beautiful, find something that's really cool and amazing, and give it some time. But it's actually been proven that the act of creating joy for other people can actually be more psychologically beneficial than receiving the joy on your end. So I always say, get out there and create the joy. So, get to know your coworkers. And that's, again, where connection is part of this. You have to be connected. You have to know people to some degree to be able to create joy for them. Because like similar to the jokes, something will make someone laugh. It makes someone else horribly offended. With joy, something might go a long way with someone. And with someone else, it's like, why did you bother?
Is it a singular thing? Is this, I mean, you talk about, I want to create joy. I want to bring humor into the workplace. But is it only singular? I feel like a culture needs to be a group effort. Can you help others find joy and humor in it?
Exactly. Everything underlining all of this, it's about psychological safety. It's about people knowing they can take risks, they can be innovative, they can do something a little bit different, they can, and most importantly, show up and be themselves. And that can be a very unfunny person. That's okay too. But it's about creating that psychological safety where you're connecting with one another as human beings. So it's safe to do things like laugh together. It's safe to do things like make somebody really, really happy by doing a kind post-it on their screen. Whatever it might be, it has to be, it's a group effort, and it's that whole kindness is contagious kind of idea. Contagious carries a lot of weight now because of the pandemic, but I mean positive contagions, where the more that you set an expectation that this is okay, the more other people are going to start to dip their toe in and go a bit further and give it a try. So absolutely, one person running around trying to make everybody laugh and make everyone happy, that person's going to burn out, and it's not going to go well for them or anybody else, because they'll be like, we don't have time for this, get out of here, this isn't safe here, we don't have psychological safety, you're going to get yelled at.
But in order to grow a garden of joy and humor, you have to have a garden of good culture and psychological safety, because culture can crush joy.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that like their job but hate where they work.
Yep.
How can you push back?
Exactly. So I think one key thing is no matter what, obviously leadership, it comes from leadership. If the leaders are, the harbingers of negativity, it's really hard to change that energy unless you're in sort of private quarters where they don't lurk. But I think the more that individual people stand up and give others space for those moments to occur, and show them a positive response, but then connect it, obviously show how that works. It's not just we sit around and giggle to each other and get no work done. Show how it creates better experiences together. And the more that you get buy-in from the leadership, and the more that leadership doesn't have to be funny, but it sets that example, that the more it will pick up in the organization. And there are some organizations where this just won't work. It's just not that type of organization. They're just too far gone. It would take a lot of effort to bring them back. But there are those that are somewhere in the middle and trying to do those really, really forced specific things like, hey, we never talk to each other personally. Let's go out for, drinks once a month and sit and stare at one another, So I think it's definitely for those cultures that are trying to get better and want to get better and understand this is one of the ways to create psychological safety, but it's not the only option.
My fear is organizations labeling this unprofessional.
Yep.
Looking at this is going, well, this is not how you should behave. But then those same executives will turn around and talk about diversity in the next sentence.
Yep.
And talk about how we need to embrace all different types of people because I've been told we have to.
Yep.
But they hide behind the unprofessional label.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Professional has done a lot of damage, I think. This delineation, I really don't believe in work-life balance. I don't believe in a professional separation. Those two things are interconnected. They will always be interconnected. If I have a terrible morning, everything goes wrong, and I come into work, even if I'm trying my absolute hardest, there's going to be a little piece of that sticks with me in the day. If I have a terrible time at work, if things are compounding in all areas of my life, they influence one another. So the best thing is for people to have a healthy life in all aspects and to be, as cared for and feel as safe as possible in all regards. And then you're going to have a better team. They're going to be more productive. They're going to be better able to focus. People, I don't care how professional you are, if the world is crumbling around you as it is for many people right now, it's really hard to get the job done, and you can only kind of grit your teeth and bear it for so long.
So I'm hilarious. I'll tell you that right out of the gate. Like, I'm a really,
I find
really
the funniest
funny
people are the ones that say it the most. So typically there's correlation there.
We're the best at selling it.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But in the workplace, there is such thing as inappropriate humor and different types of humor.
Yep.
And how do you reconcile personalization?
Yeah, so one rule that I think is really valuable, and I wish some more so-called professional comedians would honor this. And there's a sort of a prejudice in the term punching down, just saying down, meaning, but anytime that you're taking a shot at someone who has less power than you, taking a shot in general, not super cool. That's really where you've crossed the line. I think the power with work is observational humor. The things that happen. Think of I don't want to say like everyone should be Seinfeld, but in the 90s, Seinfeld made his mint just basically making observational jokes about things that we see. And yes, some of them are inappropriate and offside and all the things. Some didn't age well. But the idea of the environment and the circumstances creating humor for people, I think is because there's the things that you can relate to. What are the shared elements that we have? And again, the more that you get to know about people as individuals, the more you can tailor what you're saying to their humor. Like, for instance, I worked with this guy who, he was very quiet. He was so quiet and he never laughed. And I'm like, I'm going to make you laugh, David. We're going to make you laugh. And we made a Slack channel called Make David Laugh. And so we would just post GIFs and links and all sorts of stuff like that. And he just appreciated that we were trying, but he appreciated it. And of course, it's nuanced. You have to read people's emotions and things like that. But if there's someone who's the butt of a joke, that's not a good idea. Just generally not a good idea. You don't want to bring people down. But there are observational, just things that you can do that are funny, and everyone generally can see them that way, coming from all different backgrounds and whatnot. And even if it doesn't hit everybody, it's not everybody's joke, the lightened energy that arises from that can be helpful.
We keep being told, bring your whole self to work.
Yeah.
Well, my whole self is pretty bombastic. My whole self has a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Or my whole self is a turtle that wants to just put their head down and do their work.
Yeah.
Should we, because I want to speak to Joy here for this, because that can be, humor seems like a targeted, let's make people laugh and have a reaction. Joy is such more of an internal, I mean, you can share joy with others.
Yeah.
But how much should you give a crap, a shit, anything of what other people's perception of what you're enjoying in your work?
Yeah, because someone said to me once, even assholes can be authentic. You can be authentically an asshole, right? So not everyone's authentic. So it's not always like the best thing when people let it all hang out. But the thing about joy, I think, if you're cultivating joy for someone, I like to call them, I'm trying to find a less violent way of saying joy bombs. I like creating joy bombs for people, unexpected moments where you do something nice for someone. Comes out of nowhere, it doesn't have to cost a dime. And if somebody else thinks that's hokey or cheesy or ridiculous, I really don't give a fuck. I care about the person that it was intended for. So is it a book I found at a secondhand store that we've been talking about and I leave it on their desk? Is it, I would never bake, but if somebody baked cookies and, took them to people's doorsteps for remote workers or something like that, finding little ways to make people happy. I think you don't need to care about what other people think when you're doing it out of kindness and you're not harming anyone, you're doing good for people. It's when you're doing something that is, if you're being racist, sexist, homophobic, you're saying anything ignorant that might be true and honest and feel okay for you, that's absolutely a buttload of garbage. But when you're hurting other people, you're putting other people down, that's when it matters. That's when what other people think matters, because other people need to step up and shut that down. But if you're doing something kind and generous and sweet and not sitting around waiting for a shower of gratitude, then just do you. Who cares what other people think?
Say someone works for a soulless organization.
Yeah, like Walmart. No, I'm kidding.
Sure, yeah. Poor Walmart.
Poor Walmart.
Yeah, poor
They're struggling.
Walmart.
They're really struggling.
Oh my goodness. It's a startup. They're gonna make it happen eventually.
Someday.
I really hope
Someday.
that little underdog, I hope they do well.
Poor Walton family just struggling all those billions. Anyway, so Soulless Org Inc.
Soulless organization, and you want to inject some of that fun, joy, happiness into the workplace, into your team. Where do you start? Like, are there some things you can begin doing?
Yeah. So I have it really, organic is best. It's best if you nurture people that are already bringing that energy into the workspace and let them know, hey, we really love your energy. Like, what ideas do you have? Not assuming that you have all the ideas in this area. One thing that I think works really well is, we're all used to stand-ups and, stand up and report what you've done and what you've accomplished for the week and what's coming up and all that stuff. I like having a really quick, meeting with, it depends on the size of your team, how divided your teams need to be. I like asking a question that has absolutely nothing to do with work. And it's not anything and I like to give it to people in advance because some people stress about that stuff. So giving it to them maybe on the Friday before the Monday, and only ask questions that evoke conversation and help you learn and so some of my favorites that got the best answers were, what was your if you had a first job before this, what was it? And just learning, do you know any other languages and why? Questions like that where, people get a chance to tell you something that you might not otherwise know about them. Like the first job one was really interesting because people come from all different places where different things are sort of the usual go-to job. Mine was an assistant dance teacher and then working at Dairy Queen. Like it was just really in Manitoba. So it's just really an interesting way to dive into that person. But then you find later you can refer to that stuff. In comedy, it's called a callback, where later in the meeting, they might tell you that they used to dig out horse manure out of out of stables, and you could make a reference later to who's going to shovel the shit. Well, so and so has experience in that. So what do you think? Stuff like that, right? But you're building those connections and you're giving them a moment to be seen as a person with trying to reduce the anxiety as much as possible, because some people just being sensitive about how people like to talk. Another thing that I think we like to sort of automatically go to the person who's the leader of the team to lead a meeting. If there's someone whose energy is really great and they're able to lead the meeting instead, and they can run a meeting with this fantastic, caring, empathic energy that the rest of the team really responds to, empower them with that. If you just get in there and you set a tone and you're like, oh God, I hate this, I come off so officious and no one opens up, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that. Delegate, empower the people around you and encourage them to be that best self. And then hopefully their energy will help lift others.
Thank you for that. I love things that are a little tangible. I'm very much a big proponent of mindset before tactics, but still tactics need to be there so people can tangibly see it. But without mindset, without a will to be bringing joy into the workplace, tactics are going to fall really flat. I remember asking a question. I proposed, there was a group meeting and I proposed asking an icebreaker. Ooh, love that term. Of what was your last great movie you watched? Mm-hmm. And I actually got resistance from leadership because they're like, oh, what if they say a movie nobody likes? What if who cares? That's conversation. That is a point of, it's art. It's interpretive anyway.
And people can build connections, because if you have a quirky sense of humor and you're into this, that's the thing. In a psychologically safe environment, if I say to you, one of my favorite movies is something just terrible, like starring Dolph Lundgren or something. If I say that in a psychologically safe organization, you're not going to be like, that's a piece of shit, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Where in other organizations, that would be fine. But if it's a safe organization and you can be like, I didn't get that one, what did you like about it? Or, oh my God, I love that. Have you seen such and such? That's getting people talking to one another. That you need that, and not just among the little cliques that there's already going to be friends at work and they're going to have no problem talking about things. I'm talking about let's connect the developers and the sales team. Let's connect all these different disparate people and bring them together. And I think that's a great idea. So you can tell your leader to shove it. They're wrong.
And for those under 35 that are listening, Dolph Lundgren was the bad guy in Rocky IV, also played the Punisher and was in a few Expendables movies.
Okay, but you know why I remember him? Because I was I'm aging myself. God, I sound like 100 years old. I was at Rogers Video with my now ex-husband, and we were looking at movies, and I thought he was beside me, and I was down looking at the bottom shelf, and this hand reached up beside me and grabbed this Dolph Lundgren movie, and I looked and I went, are you fucking kidding me? And then I look and I'm like, you're not my husband. He's like, no, I'm not your husband. So I got up. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm sure it's great. And so I went off to find my husband. And the guy I look back and the guy looks at the video and he looks all sad. And he just puts it back on the shelf. So I ruined his night. It was not good.
For those under 35, a video store is where you would go to rent video. I love that you tried to correct I sound old Dolph Lundgren by telling a video store story.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty soon it's going to be there were no...
everything
was black and white and nobody talked. It's just all silent films. I've lived a life. What can I say?
People get real judgy.
Yeah.
People will be bothered by people finding joy in the next cubicle over who are laughing at the other cubicle over. Mm-hmm. And they'll get real judgy about how they are reacting to their work. Why don't they just go do their work? Why am I having to put up with this? Why are you guys being so loud?
Yep.
How can you as a leader sort of embrace all of this? Because you have people that are going to be wanting that joy and that humor, but you're also going to find the people that just want to do what they do.
Absolutely. And it's everything in moderation. Do I think you should have a workplace where you're laughing constantly 24/7? God, no. I worked in a mental health company. If I'd done that, imagine you come into the office and I'm giggling and doing cartwheels in a clown suit. It's all about balance. And it's a nuanced thing, being able to shift from ha ha ha, funny, 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 and kind of like, all right, let's buckle down. What are we going to do here? But in a way that doesn't feel like that you're scolding anyone for participating. It's like, okay, and now we shift. We move into the thing. So it's finding a way to navigate transitions, I guess, is part of it. And understand, yes, if people are cackling in the corner all day, that would be annoying and that would put me off the edge too. So none of this I'm saying is like completely straightforward. And it does take a lot of, I think, new leadership skills that maybe, instead of whipping people now, we're going to, find ways to sort of ease them into like, let's get on task now. So yeah, I think it takes practice. It takes practice. It's not perfect, but honestly, people need it. They need it right now. People are struggling. I put out a post on Instagram yesterday. It's a very official, very scientific poll. Asking if people were kind of at their wits' end, because everyone I've talked to lately is kind of at their wits' end, and 75% said, "Yeah, I'm there." So I in these moments, I prefer to sort of lean on the let's create a little more joy and a little more levity and see what happens, versus let's not experiment with this because we're afraid of what might happen.
I think one of the biggest superpowers, especially in leadership, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, is what you highlighted there, which is situational awareness.
Yes.
Self-awareness is great, and absolutely, and I can't run that flag enough. But situational awareness is really understanding what's happening around you with the compassion and empathy to do something about it.
Exactly.
So to see other groups that are, and you're listening and you're paying attention, I think it's all the senses sort of within that awareness where you see those people that are laughing, but you eventually do have to get some work. And there are other people that are just working hard, and you need to relax a little more. You're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And unless you have that fulsome picture and understand what that means, I think that's a leadership skill we do not talk enough about.
No, exactly. And it's becoming more and more necessary because it is so nuanced. You can't treat even just 3 employees, you can't treat them all the same. They all have very different needs and very different ways of being motivated and inspired. And so the more that we do practice those skills and are able to sort of in our minds hold all these things in our heads about not just performance at work, but also what is this person living through at this moment and how can I best support them as a human being, not just a worker bee.
Where would you direct people if they want to know more information about just getting a little bit of more happy in their work? Is there any resources that sort of inspire you?
Yes. There's an amazing book. I have it here because I always have books. Humour Seriously. Why Human is a Secret Weapon in Business and in Life. By 2 Stanford professors, so they're legit, super legit. But this was one of the professors that taught this amazing course, the online course that I took. And they talk about, for the naysayers, for the disbelievers, why humor actually is an asset and why it is something to be refined. So that book, highly, highly recommend. They have TED Talks, all sorts of things. But they'll sell you on, if the other things aren't working, give this a shot.
So, Erin,
yes.
What's one
Russel,
simple
very
action?
Serious.
I know, right? Yeah. Tone shift.
Yeah.
What's one simple action people can do right now to improve their relationships at work?
Ask questions. Ask questions, not probing questions. Don't get too personal. Don't get too rude. But you can always ask somebody, I love your necklace. Where did you get that? And there's usually a story. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe they made it. Maybe they don't even know, but they're just happy you're talking to them. Anything you can start a conversation with and ask questions, because we so often spend our times thinking about what we're going to say next. And instead, we just need to shut up and listen and ask a question.
That is Erin Skillen. She's the founder of Content for Good, a consultancy helping organizations improve their culture and engagement. And that's a little something we try to do on this podcast as well. Thanks so much for being on the show, Erin.
Yay, thank you so much. I had a blast.